Welcome back to another Outdoor Philosophy, and we are going to be talking today, starting with the book Dumbing Down Our Kids. Of course, we introduced the topic and who the author is last time, and we're going to be looking at section 1 today, which is simply called Dumbing Down America's Kids. Now, this entirety of the section, we have 3 chapters, and it's mostly a lot of our statistics showing how. So, number 1 is just some of the trends. The fact that a lot of these new education trends aren't actually new at all. They are rehashes of old trends that have come and gone a long time ago. And that's one of the things to keep in mind. Number 2 is Losing the Race, which just looks at a comprehensive look at the statistics. How are American kids compared to other kids regarding the how the homework and how the education system is doing. How do American kids correlate to other countries' kids? Because America is, for a developed nation, we're like at the bottom of the list consistently in developed nations. The only, we might even be able to compete with some of the non-developed nations, but even that is questionable. All right, and then chapter 3 really talks about the denial. Now, one of the things I really like is he has these little essays, which are kind of small case studies in between certain chapters, in between sections. He calls these scenes from the front, which are examples indicating what's going on with the education world. Now, of course, in the first one, Dumbing Down Our Kids, he really spends some time talking about how we as the American society, this is of course written from the American perspective, so if you're not American perspective, just keep that in mind. But we kind of look at the politics. There's always this big push about, and in reality, there was another great book, and I try to remember. I think we did a outdoor philosophy series based on a follow-up book to it, but it's called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. The reality, like everything in life, is not simply either this is right or that is wrong. There's a lot in emotional intelligence that's completely right. Daniel Goleman's approach to education is you have to deal with the emotional challenges. And that is where the modern curricula starts to come in, is to say there's emotional challenges, we have to deal with the underlying emotional issues only then. And Daniel Goleman does make some very valid points that a person who does not know if they're going to eat tonight really doesn't care what 3 times 3 is. All right. But on the flip side, if you don't give the kids the opportunity to learn what 3 times 3 is, they're never going to come across that knowledge, even if you make them feel good about themselves. And the third issue is that making kids feel good about themselves does not increase the emotional intelligence of kids. If you actually read Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, you'll understand that it's not just we have to build up the little self-esteem with making them feel good by giving everybody trophies and giving everybody A's. That's not a way to success. All right, so with that, he really spends a lot of time looking at how the modern view is just kind of rehashed. A self-esteem view, a make your kids feel better about yourselves view. And the next one is Losing the Race, which is basically the statistics. Not only are we getting, are the percentage of people who are successful on standardized tests is decreasing, also our ratio per capita people who are successful in tests in America is significantly lower than nearly any other developed nation. I think any other developed nation, really. But a reality that something that he never hit on here is the invalidity of standardized tests. Because what he never talked about here is standardized tests themselves have shifted. Now, that might have been after this book's time, but it wasn't too far after this book's time. When I took SATs in the late 90s, we still did them on paper. Everyone got the same test, and they were literally, SATs is a standardized test. It's called a standardized aptitude test. Standardized implies everyone's taking the same test. The problem is the modern view, by the time I got to graduate school, and it was all on computers, the problem is with the testing methods of the modern computer systems, they are not any longer standardized tests, and they don't do a good job of reflecting things. To give you an example, on my mathematics part of my GRE, my graduate record exam, these are what you need to go into grad school, I missed 1 question, and I finished 20 minutes early. The problem is, you are not allowed to go back and check your work. Once you answer a question, that automatically determines algorithmically, do you go into the higher tier or the lower tier? So if you know the entire dictionary except for one word, and you go into the SAT and you miss the very first word, the only word you don't know, you get the very first question wrong, but you get everything else right, you are automatically in the lower 70 percentile. That's how these standardized tests work. They're not standardized anymore. That's a problem he never addressed in this. And if I had the standardized tests and I finished my math section 20 minutes early, I would have gone back through, reworked every problem, and probably found the correct answer and fixed it and got it perfect. But I didn't have that opportunity because the stupid thing was done on computers. It wasn't a standardized test. That's one of the things that we may not be taking into account. Now, the last part is really about American way of denial, how we're kind of denying this. A lot of it's like polls. How do I feel like I'm doing? How do your students feel like they're doing, etc., etc. Now, what I thought was the most important and significant thing to focus on here is one of these scenes from the front. This follows a teacher by the name of Adelaide Jones. Adelaide Jones, she was a very good math teacher. I think it's middle school or high school. Might have been high school. I think she was teaching Algebra 2, so that would have been a high school class. And she's teaching Algebra 2, and the first time she taught the class, I think it's like 40 or 60, let's see what it was. A high percentage of people failed the class. And then she basically went through and figured out how to better prepare people, and got to the point where this year only 22% of people failed her class. And the school board was up in arms about this because they really thought that she should be passing a lot more people. It's like, if that many people are failing, we need to get those numbers down to maybe only 5% or so. And so they asked her to grade on a curve. And she came back and said, I don't want to grade on a curve because that will disservice the students. As they go off to college, they will be expected to know this. As they go off to life, they will be expected to know this. This resonates with me because my last semester teaching, I came into one of these, and now I wasn't teaching high school, I was actually teaching college. I was teaching an organic chemistry class. And we gave this big assignment, and the task of the assignment was to write a organic chemistry paper that was going to be as if we were submitting it to the Journal of Chemical Education. I gave them the requirement sheets for the Journal of Chemical Education. I even took, as if I should have to take a sophomore level class of college students to a library to teach them how to do research. I still did that. In 6 weeks, when I got back the first drafts, I got quality work that was so bad. It was so bad that I basically told the class, if I don't see college level work, you're all going to fail. The school did not like that. They did not. They thought that wasn't being kind enough to their kids' perceptions. You know what? They might have been mad at me, and the students might have been mad at me, and they might have, he made me feel bad. But at the end of that semester, I got college level work. And those students were prepared. And I don't know if any of them are ever going to watch this video, but you tell me, a decade later, was that a beneficial thing or non-beneficial thing? Was it better that I make you feel better, or was it better that you learn how to be a student? And I would wager, hands down, all of them, probably except for one who never learned the lesson, would agree that that was the right approach. Now, there was another fun lesson in that same semester, and that is that a student just decided to stop showing up. They just stopped showing up. No conversation, no communication. In fact, she had a high, I don't know, she had a high C or so around that time. And stopped showing up. So, of course, misses, I have weekly quizzes, daily homework, and, the monthly exams. So she misses an exam, 5 quizzes, and all of the homework. So, of course, her grade is F because she's not officially dropped the class or anything. Well, she comes in one time in the middle in between classes when I'm closing down one class, I'm prepping for another class. She's like, sign this paper so I can drop the class and keep my scholarship. I said, well, you know what? This is not my office hours. Leave me the paper. I'll read it and come back to my office hours. Well, she basically wanted to get a sign-off to drop the class. So I go to my boss and I said, hey, this student was doing just fine, passing the class with a very respectable grade, and simply stopped showing up without any communication. 6 weeks later, comes to me and wants me to sign a paper so that she can retroactively drop the class. He's like, I wouldn't sign it. I'm like, I don't want to sign it. Well, you know, because it's like, oh, I want to make you feel good, but I want to keep my scholarship. I don't want to lose my scholarship. Grow up, woman. Grow up. Now, that might sound harsh on a level. Go, oh, if you're younger, like, oh, that's so mean. No, that is teaching you and preparing you for the real world. That's teaching and preparing you for the real world. And that is so important because this teacher that Sykes is talking about in the book, she ended up losing her job over the fact that she was not going to compromise it. And that was one of the final things I said to them is, did you pay me to teach chemistry or did you pay me to make your students feel good? Because I looked over my contract, heads to tails, top to bottom. There was nothing in that thing about making students feel good, but I was appointed as a chemistry professor. That was my job. I was upholding my job. Now, I wasn't intentionally being mean, but sometimes you just got to approach it and say, you know what? Sorry, I don't take homework late. Sorry, I don't. I'm going to tell you that this is bad because you guys are all going to fail if I don't. These are those problematic things. Now, the story did end okay because eventually the school board recognized that the students were doing so poorly afterwards. Basically, a lot of people who testified, who went through her class in years past, came back and said that's exactly what they needed. And there was a coup in the school board and half of the board was let go. They brought in new people that reinstated her as a teacher. That ended well. But the reality is we are in this world where education systems want to care more about making us feel better than they care about teaching us the knowledge or how to find the knowledge. And that's what's important. So that is section 1 of dumbing down our kids. Thanks for coming along on this outdoor philosophy.